Chapter 14, Jeffrey. The swarthy dudes had my arms and were pulling me toward the door. "Where are we going?" I said. "To see Fook," said the bartender. At least it sounded like he said Fook. "Fook?" I said. "No, Fook." "That's what I said, Fook." "No, it's Fook." "Okay, whatever," I said. "Is Fook in charge? Because I need to talk to somebody who..." "You will not talk to Fook. You will listen to Fook, and then you will tell him answers about this." He waved toward the TV set, which was showing pictures of me and Horkman over a headline that said Bridge to Terror. There was also a logo, like a silhouette of the GW Ridge with the bomb in front of it. Say what you want about TV news, they move fast. A gas explosion wipes out a preschool. 5 minutes later, they have a logo for it. "Listen," I said, "I don't know anything about that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. This is a big misunderstanding. Do not be misunderstanding this." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a gun. "If you try to run away, I will shoot you in balls like you did to police," he said. "I didn't shoot the police in the balls." "Well, somebody shooted police in balls, and this is how I am shooting you if you run away." If you think about it, there's no way he could hit me in the balls if I was running away, but I didn't point this out. I was getting the feeling these guys were not criminal geniuses. Another clue was, before they took me outside, they put a bag over my head. I guess the idea was to keep me from seeing where we were going, but they used a cheapo plastic bag from a Duane Reade drugstore. You could pretty much see through it. Plus, even in Manhattan, you're going to attract more attention with a guy who has a bag over his head than a guy who doesn't have a bag over his head, right? Morons. They took me outside and put me in the back of a van. The bartender told me to lie on the floor. "If you try to get up," he said, "I shoot your balls." I must have heard that in a movie. The van started moving. I could hear the bartender talking to somebody in some weird language on his cell phone. I admit I was worried. I was thinking, whoever the fuck Fook is, I hope he has more brains than these cretins. We drove for maybe 15 minutes and parked. They pulled me out of the van, and right away the Duane Reade bag blew off. So much for that. We were in a busy street next to some kind of restaurant, but I didn't get a good look because they hustled me into an alley where they opened a door and pushed me inside. We were in a back office. Computer, phone, crappy little TV in the corner showing the Bridge Tower logo, Dilbert cartoon on the wall next to a sign showing how to get the Heimlich maneuver. The bartender pushed me into a chair and told me to stay there and don't move. He said something to the other two guys, handed one of them his gun, then left. When he opened the door, I heard beeping sounds like from video games coming down the hall. He was gone a while. On the TV, they showed my picture again, and Horkman's underneath it said terror suspects. Finally, the door opened. The bartender walked in first. He turned and looked back at the doorway. We were all looking at the doorway, waiting for Fook. And then Fook walked in. Fook was Chuck E. Cheese. I swear to gosh, he was wearing a furry costume with a big plastic smiling rat head or mouse head, or the fuck kind of rodent Chuck E. Cheese is. The bartender pointed to me and said something. Fooky Cheese came over and stood in front of me, looking down. "Memphiurufa," he said, or something like that. Between his accent and the rodent head, I couldn't make it out. "What?" I said. The bartender said he asked who you were working for. "I'm not working for anybody," I said. "I'm self-employed. I'm a forensic plumber." Fook smacked me across the face. It didn't really hurt because he had these big, soft paws, but I wasn't expecting it. "Hey," I said. "But who you know, Jordan?" said Fook. The bartender said he wants to know, do you think he is idiot? "No." "And he moy no," said Fook. "Then why are you telling him lies?" said the bartender. I'm not lying. If you were a plumber, why are you blowing up Bridge? Do you think Bridge is a broken toilet that you are fixing? Okay, first, I don't fix toilets. I'm a forensic plumber. I know a lot about toilets from an engineering standpoint, but my work is... Ma, said Fook, raising his paw again. I admit I flinched. He says you are wasting time, said the bartender. Fook said something to one of the Lieutenant Swarthies who left the room. I was getting a bad feeling about this. Listen, I said. If you give me a minute here, I can explain this whole thing. This explanation, the bartender said. Is it the one you tell me before about the monkey? It's a lemur. A snorting sound came from inside the Chuck E. Cheese head. I would not tell this explanation to Fook, said the bartender. But I swear that... I was interrupted by the door opening. The lieutenant came in holding two things. One was a foot-long stick of pepperoni. The other was a pizza slicer. It was one of those wheel things with the wooden handle. The blade looked sharp. The lieutenant handed the pepperoni and the slicer to Fook. He took them in his hands and set the pepperoni on the desk next to me. He held the slicer in front of my face. He said. He says, look, said the bartender. Fook put the edge of the slicer blade on the desk and ran it across the middle of the pepperoni. It sliced it clean in two. I thought, oh shit, he's gonna cut off my dick. Said Fook. Tell him who you're working for, said the bartender. I don't work for anybody, I said. I had nothing to do with any of this, I swear. Fook said something, and the two Lieutenant Swarthies grabbed me, pinned my right arm on the desktop, and pressed my hand flat, fingers out. So the good news, he wasn't going to cut off my dick. Fook put the blade on the desk right next to my hand. He rolled it right up to my pinky so I could feel the edge. That's when I pissed my pants. If you think you wouldn't, you're a fucking liar. Please, I said. Said Fook. Tell him who you're working for, said the bartender. Before you judge me for what I did next, put yourself in my shoes, which at the moment were filling up with urine. I pointed to the TV screen. It was showing a close-up of Horkman, the prick who got me into all this in the first place. Him? I said I work for him. Fook pointed his rodent snout at the screen for a few seconds, then turned back to me. Come here, he said. I looked at the bartender. Fook says you will take us to this man, he said. Now. Chapter 15, Philip. I eventually walked through the emergency room and had one foot out the sliding doors when I felt a hand on my shoulder and heard a commanding voice say, Go! I spun around and saw that the hand was actually a big furry paw worn by a person dressed in a costume with the head of a grinning, big-eared character that was the spitting image, I'm sorry to say, of my son Trace, who, for reasons that still baffle every dentist we've ever taken him to, has only one front tooth, which is very wide and has a line down its middle, making it look like he has two front teeth, like Chuck E. Cheese. So whether it was because this character resembled my son, or because I reminded myself that I was posing as a doctor and there were sickly children in the emergency room who I was sure needed a good laugh, I grabbed this creature's paws and started dancing with him around the emergency room. And though the children did indeed laugh, parentheses, I do this funny high kick that always makes my own children giggle and never fails to delay adults as well. Close parentheses. I sensed resistance on the part of my partner, as if a jaunty cha-cha-cha was not what he had in mind despite his jolly get-up. And my hunch that he might have a different agenda was confirmed when I spun the two of us around and saw two mean-looking men nonchalantly opening their sport jackets, revealing guns tucked in their waistbands, standing next to that idiot Peckerman, who who was pointing at me saying, that's him, that's my boss. And though I was curious what this was all about, I had a sneaky feeling that a post-dance Q&A session was probably not in the offing. So, when I completed a revolution around the emergency room and was once again about a step away from the automatic sliding doors, I released Chucky's grip, parentheses, his faux pas absolutely no match for my mightier pet shop owner thumbs, close parentheses, dashed out of the hospital shouting, help me, opened the back doors to an EMS vehicle as it was slowly pulling away, and rode in it for half a block while a paramedic asked, is something wrong, doctor? To which I cried, yes, something is horribly wrong, prompting the driver, parentheses, who believed I was talking about medically wrong as opposed to in danger of being killed by a foreign man dressed like a restaurant logo wrong, close parentheses, turned on the siren, shifted into reverse, and sped backward to the emergency room entrance and into the awaiting arms of my captors. Why weren't we told about this attack? I was now sitting on a rock, a real big rock, in the middle of a fenced-in area, the Central Park Zoo. I knew it was the Central Park Zoo because after the EMS guys were gone, the two mean-looking men put a bag over my head, threw me into the back of a van, drove across town, and removed the bag just in time for me to see the sign that said, welcome to the Central Park Zoo. Then, after the goons forced me onto the top of the rock, one of them kept his gun trained on me, while the other acted as interpreter for the Chuck E. Cheese guy, who was grunting words devoid of both vowels and consonants. I don't know anything about any attacks, I said. He's lying. He's the one who told me about it, shouted Peckerman, who is now tied to a tree. Now let me go. Come on, I did what you asked. I took you to him, so let me go. How did he know where I was? I asked. Your wife told him, said the gun-toting goon. My wife? He borrowed my phone, and your wife said you just called from the hospital and that we should also go there because we sounded as drunk as you. That's my boss's wife, said Peckerman, shaking his head, laughing, always with the jokes. I am not his boss, I pleaded, and I am also not a terrorist. Of course he is, yelled Peckerman. Just look at his fucking ID. If that isn't a rag-headed jihad name, I don't know what is. The interpreter goon looked at my doctor's badge and read the name on it. Jahangir Shahrastani, he pronounced with frightening ease. That's not my name, I told him. Sure it is, Peckerman shouted. That's what I always call him. He doesn't call me anything. I didn't even know this guy existed until a few regrettable days ago. Are you related to the Shahrastanis in Habaniya? The goon asked in a whisper. I am not related to any Shahrastanis anywhere. That's not my name. This picture is you, said the goon. I said, look, my name is Philip Horkman, but I stole this guy's ID and put my picture on it so people wouldn't know who I really am. And why don't you want them to know this? Because they think I tried to blow up the George Washington Bridge and then I shot a helicopter pilot in the scrotum. We think that also. But I didn't. Look at my wallet. Look at the pictures, you'll see. I'm just a simple family man who owns a pet shop in Fort Lee, New Jersey. Ask him the name of his pet shop, shouted Peckerman. What does that have to do with anything? I shouted back. It's important, yelled Peckerman, though I wasn't sure if he was answering me or simply saying this to the goon. And why is it important? The goon asked Peckerman. It's not important, I insisted. We have a lot of our terrorist meetings there, said Peckerman. We what? This tidbit was of obvious interest to these guys. And what is the name of this pet shop? Asked the goon. It's not important, I answered. I'm going to ask you again, he said, suddenly angry. What is the name of this pet shop? The wine shop. I'm going to ask you again, he said, suddenly angrier. What is the name of this pet shop? The wine shop. This time he turned toward Peckerman and asked the same question. What is the name of his pet shop? Jahangir Shahristani from Habaniya's Pet World. At this point, the goon turned to Fook, and brought him up to speed about this conversation. And though they were speaking a language I couldn't understand, you didn't have to be a linguist to tell that Fook was less than pleased. His Chuck E. Cheese head now spinning atop his gray velvet shoulders. The interpreter goon then shouted something to the gun goon, who then approached Peckerman and started untying the rope that bound him to that tree. It's about time, said Peckerman, massaging his wrist where the skin was red from rope burn. Then Peckerman looked at those guys and said, "Take care, fellas." Then looked at me and said, "So long, asshole." Then took about 2 steps toward the exit, before the goon stepped in front of him, blocking his path. Told him to turn around, then marched him at gunpoint to the top of the big rock I'd been sitting on. They then made us slide on top of each other and tied us together. "Whether or not you are terrorists is no longer of our concern," said the interpreter, who I suspect was translating what Fook was saying. "We have our own mission, and so do these big black bears." Whereupon the goon with the gun inserted a big key into the locks on 2 iron doors at the lower end of the fenced-in area we were in, and swung them both open. The 3 of them then exited through a gate and disappeared into the night about the same time the first black bear emerged from the lair. Chapter 16. Jeffrey. This was my plan. 1. Untie myself from Horkman. 2. Keep Horkman between me and the bear, so that if it started chewing on anybody, it would be Horkman. 3. Get the fuck out of there. You think I'm a coward? Let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where a bear was about to eat you? No? Okay, then I don't give a shit what you think. The problem was I couldn't get free from the rope. Fook's crew did a really good job of tying us up, so Horkman and I were pressed together tight. My arms were pinned to my sides and my hands were tied in front of me, but I couldn't move anything enough to get at the knots. The worst part was Horkman was on top of me, his front facing my back doggy style. His face was pressed into the rock. His mouth was breathing in my left ear. It was fucking disgusting. "Get off me," I said. "I'm trying," he said. "Stop pushing my butt, homo," I said. "That is offensive," he said. "Tell it to your boner," I said. "Shh," he whispered. "Don't move." The bear had reached the rock. It was down on all fours, sniffing the air. Then it stood up. The thing was the size of a UPS truck. It was leaning over us, still sniffing. "Hold perfectly still," Horkman whispered. "You must not move." "Fuck that," I said, and rolled hard away from the bear. We fell off the rock. The good news was we fell Horkman side down, so he broke my fall. His head hit the ground with a sound like thwack. The bad news was now that I was on top, I was the one closest to the bear, and it was coming around the rock. "Get up," I said, trying to get my feet under me. Underneath me, Horkman was moaning. "Come on," I said, "get up." Nothing from Horkman, asshole. I don't know how I did it, adrenaline I guess, but somehow I got the 2 of us onto our feet. Horkman still moaning, hanging off me like some kind of giant douchebag backpack. The bear was still coming toward me. It was maybe 5 feet away. "Stay," I said. Believe it or not, the bear stopped. It was looking at me with this expression of "what the fuck?" Very slowly I turned around, presenting my Horkman side to the bear. Ahead of me I could see the gate where Fook and the other bastards went out. I started moving that way. I had to do it by making little hops because my knees and Horkman's were tied together. I turned my head around to see how close the bear was. Jesus. Now there were 2 bears. One to the left, one to the right. There was no way I could point Horkman at both of them. By hopping like a bastard, I made it to the gate. Thank goodness Fook left it unlocked. I pushed it open and hopped through, dragging Horkman. I was sweating and breathing hard. I could hear the bears right behind me. Up ahead through the trees, I could see lights and hear cars on Fifth Avenue. I heard scuffling and growling off to the right. The bears had found a garbage can and were rooting around in it. This was my chance. I started hopping into the woods toward the traffic. Suddenly, there were people in front of me. The light wasn't good. For a second, I thought it was Fook and his crew. But then I saw it was some young punks, 4 of them, with those pants they wear so low you can see the entire ass of their boxer shorts. "Hey," I said, "I need some help here." One of them stepped close. "Why you got that man tied to you?" he said. "It's a long story," I said, "and how about you untie us and I'll tell you, okay?" "You got any money?" he asked. "I'll give you some money if you untie us, okay?" The lead punk turned to the others and said, "Man gonna pay us to untie him." They all thought that was pretty funny. The lead punk started going through my pockets. "Hey," I said, which I admit was stupid, but that's what I came up with. The punk found my wallet, then he searched Horkman and came up with his wallet and phone. "Okay," I said, "now you got our money, so if you could just..." "What else you got?" he said. "Nothing," I said. He frowned. "Where you got your phone?" he said. "I don't have it with me," I said. He reached down to his pants pocket, which was down around his knees, and pulled out a gun. He showed it to me. "This is my night for having assholes show me their guns. Everybody got a phone," he said. "I swear I don't have it with me." He jammed the gun barrel between my hands into my gut. I would have pissed my pants, except I already had. The punk was about to say something. I'm guessing it involved my phone, but I never found out because that was when the bears showed up. They must have finished the garbage. You always hear that if you see a bear, you shouldn't try to run away. I'm here to tell you that is good advice, because all 4 punks took off and both bears took off after them, which left me standing there with Horkman still on my back. I started hopping again. I reached Fifth Avenue, and somehow, I still don't know how, I heaved Horkman and me over the wall onto the sidewalk. I did it so we landed Horkman side down again, my feeling being that I did all the work getting us there, and he needed to pull his fucking weight. We were lying on the sidewalk, me on top. People were walking past, and I was like, "Hey, can you give us a hand here?" In Des Moines, if people saw 2 guys tied up on the sidewalk, they'd stop and help out. But this was New York, so nobody slowed down. Most of them didn't even look up from texting. After a few minutes, I managed to get us back up onto all 4 of our feet and hopped over to the curb. There was a cab right there, stopped at a light. I hopped to it and managed to get a pinky on the latch and open the door. I turned around and pushed hard, shoving Horkman and me falling backward on top of him. Turned out the cab was occupied, and so now both of us were on top of the occupant and a guy in a suit. "The hell?" he said. "Sorry," I said, "if you could just get the hell out." He said, "This is my cab." The driver was also shouting at me, but he was a New York City taxi driver, so I had no idea what language he was speaking. I shifted Horkman around so I could sort of sit up and face them. "Listen," I said, but before I could say anything else, the suit opened the door on his side and bailed out. While I was trying to figure that out, the driver, who suddenly could speak English, said, "Please, no trouble, please." He was staring at my stomach. I looked down, and all of a sudden I understood what was happening. I was holding a punk's gun. "Please," said the driver again. He was scared shitless. "Take me to New Jersey," I said, "or I'll shoot you in the balls."